One nuclear weapon.
On the program, Onga the 77th, President Muhammadu Buhari led key members of the Nigerian delegation towards achieving a successful outing. A unified security sector reform and governance is on the way to tackle terrorism and extremism in West Africa. Also in our package, we bring you an exclusive interview with the British High Commissioner to Nigeria on the new British monarchy. These are some of the topical issues we'll be looking at on the program Global Update. And if you are watching this for the first time, well, it's a program that brings you up to speed with some of the events that made headlines in the course of the week on the review. I am Patricia Asamiluva. Welcome. Let's have a look at the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly, ONGA, held in New York in the course of the week. The General Assembly for 2022 aimed at building hope and solutions to the complex and interconnected crisis bedeviling the global community. President Muhammadu Buhari led Nigeria's delegation to the world's largest diplomatic gathering for the 8th and the last time under his administration as an elected leader of the country.
As President, I have set the goal that one of the enduring legacies I would like to leave is to entrench a process of free, fair, and transparent, credible election through which Nigerians elect leaders of their choice. As the 78th Anga, there will be a new face at this podium speaking for Nigeria. In Nigeria, not only have we worked to strengthen our democracy, but we have supported it and promoted the rule of law in our sub-region. We have seen the corrosive impact on values when leaders elsewhere seek to change the rules to stay in power. We believe in the sanctity of constitutional term limits, and we have steadfastly adhered to it in Nigeria. We live in extraordinary times with independent challenges but enormous opportunities. The face of change can seem bewildering, with sometimes a palpable and unsettling sense of uncertainty about our future. Our strongest moments have always been when we remain true to the basic principle of tolerance, community, and abiding commitment to peace and goodwill towards all. We must also come together to defend freedom of speech while upholding other values that we cherish. We must continue to work for a common standard that balances rights with responsibilities to keep the most vulnerable from harm and help strengthen and enrich communities.
Meanwhile, at the kickoff of the high-level week of the 77th session of ONGA, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, said divides are growing deeper, inequalities are growing wider, and challenges are spreading further.
Let's tell it like it is. Our world is addicted to fossil fuels, and it's time for an intervention. We need to hold fossil fuel companies and their enablers to account. Polluters must pay. And today I'm calling on all developed economies to tax the windfall profits of fossil fuel companies. Those funds should be redirected in two ways: to countries suffering loss and damage caused by the climate crisis, and to people struggling with rising food and energy prices. The divergence between developed and developing countries, between North and South, between the privileged and the rest, is becoming more dangerous by the day. So let's develop common solutions to common problems, grounded in goodwill, trust, and the rights shared by every human being. Let's work as one, a coalition of the world, as United Nations.
Next year, we will assess SDG 6 at the UN Water Conference, the first since 1977. Water is set to be the next major driver of conflict worldwide. The problem of water is threefold: too much, not enough, not safe. We have the chance to make a difference in the lives of 2.1 billion people who lack access to clean water. I want to advance negotiations on Security Council reform. It is high time that the Council represents the world's population more equally and that it reflects 21st century realities. This is a matter of credibility to our entire organization. Things get better when we make them better. Things go wrong when we fail to seize the opportunities before us. Our opportunity is here and now. Let us act.
And away from UNGA the 77th to ECOWAS, where we have reports saying member states are expected to adopt a unified security sector reform and governance in tackling terrorism and violent extremism in the West African sub-region. This is part of recommendation by security experts and foreign partners at a capacity development workshop for stakeholders in the security sector.
It's a way to contribute to the democratization progress in ECOWAS member states by encouraging security institutions to comply with democratic governance principles, which, it almost goes without saying, is accountability, transparency, and the rule of law.
We can't speak of development when there's no peace, and we can't have peace when there is no purposeful strategy to make that peace happen. ECOWAS security sector policy framework provides us that too.
Curbing these negative phenomena would indeed go a long way towards entrenching a sustainable development in our region.
You are watching Global Update on NTA News 24. Let's take a break and I'll be back in a moment. Welcome back, and now to our exclusive with the British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Catriona Laing, who spoke on the legacies of Her Majesty, the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, a reign that lasted for over 70 decades and left some laudable and impressive ideologies that will remain evergreen for generations that will not be easily forgotten, leaving a strong mark in our hearts as the longest-serving British monarch. And the 8th of September will always be a memorable day to the entire world over the passing on to glory of Her Royal Majesty, the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II. As Her Royal Majesty, the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, is laid to rest, we extend our condolences. May Her Majesty rest in peace.
Thank you very much.
Now, Your Excellency Ma, you're going to permit us to start our conversation. The huge legacies that the Queen left behind, will it be right to say that King Charles III will find it very difficult to wear the big shoe left behind by the Queen, as the dawning of a new era beckons on him for that?
Well, let me start with her legacy, and which is indeed a tremendous one. 70 years on the throne. She has seen so much of history, she has reached so many people, touched so many lives. We've been absolutely overwhelmed by the outpouring of sympathy, solidarity and support we've had from the people of Nigeria from the most senior VIPs to ordinary people that I've met just out and about. I think she just shows the influence she has had globally. A true icon. And as your own president said in his words, he said, the history of Nigeria is not complete without a chapter on Queen Elizabeth II. Yeah. She was a truly global leader. So the challenge for King Charles III, well, first thing to say is, of course, he's had many years to prepare. Her Majesty's been on the throne for 70 years. He was only 3 when his mother became queen. So he's always known all his life that he will be taking up the role of sovereign. And I believe he's led a very good life in preparing. He's got a number of commitments and interests that he's been leading, and has also changed many people's lives. As he moves now into the role of sovereign, his life will change dramatically and his role will be a different one. But he has all the wisdom of his mother passed on to him. He's observed her, witnessed her, and he said that in his wonderful tribute to his mother when he did his first address to the British people, where he paid tribute to her guidance, her wisdom, as he's been led and prepared for the role. But of course it will be a different role for him. We are now at the end of the Elizabethan era. We move into the era of King Charles III. So whilst all of the constitutional arrangements remain in place, none of that changes, and we have a very smooth transition, and indeed the transition has been very smooth, he will be his own person, and he will adopt, he will play a different role in the throne, not least because he won't be on the throne for 70 years.
Oh, definitely.
He is now 74, I believe. But he's very well prepared, and I think he's got huge support from the British people. The polling is very strong and has come out solidly behind him. So I think he starts with a great foundation of hers to build on, and will, I think, take it from strength to strength, including the role of the Commonwealth.
Yeah. And King Charles III, as we would now start calling him Prince Charles, King Charles now, when he officially took the oath of office on the 10th of September, barely 2 days after the passing of his mom, he said he will build on her legacies, though some opinions suggest otherwise, that his previous antecedents and ideologies differ from hers.
The Queen herself was on the throne for 70 years, so she saw 15 British prime ministers, for example. So, of course, her role will have changed during that time. You can look at the early footage of her and the issues that she was grappling with, the transition from empire to the Commonwealth, and obviously the fall of the Berlin Wall, for example. I mean, she saw great moments in history. If you recall the wonderful words she gave to comfort following 9/11, the terrorist attacks in 9/11, when she said, "Grief is the price we pay for love." So what was, in all those different incidents, what we saw from her was she performed the role of a rock, stability, and with this turbulence around. So I see King Charles moving very smoothly into that role and performing that rock solid support, reaching out to people compassionately, making people feel they're not alone. He will do that differently because he's a different person. He's her son, he's an individual, but he will play the same role. Inevitably, there will be crises, many. We're living through such turbulent times, and there will be specific incidents where we look to him, times of crisis, where he'll give specific speeches of comfort and so on. On the ideology point, I think ideology is quite a strong word. He has very strong beliefs and values. So, for example, around the environment and climate change. When your President Buhari met with the then Prince Charles at Dumfries House in January 2020, I had the privilege of being present at the 1.5-hour meeting over high tea, where they talked about their common interest in climate change. And President Buhari said to him, "You were ahead of your time. You must at least feel pleased to see that you've been proved. You've been proved right." He said, Prince Charles responded, "Yes, I was ahead of my time, but I'm not happy to be proved right," i.e. the terrible climatic issues we're facing. So he will remain passionate about those issues. Those are things he deeply, deeply cares about. And he's left a fantastic legacy. His charities will be passed on. But his role will now change. So he'll retain his beliefs, his values, in the same way his mother had her own beliefs and values. But the role of the sovereign is a very different one in our constitution. He's not, he's not formally head of state in a legal sort of governing sense. What he will do, as his mother did, will have a weekly audience with the Prime Minister, now Liz Truss, and it's a private audience, and he will give her his best advice and counsel, and that will draw on his beliefs and his values. Inevitably, we all of us a accumulation of our beliefs and values. But the process will remain, and the transition's been very smooth, and he knows that his role will now be a different one.
Now, speaking about the ideologies, what do you think is or are the areas that the common British citizen, will appreciate to see in the reign of King Charles III that is different from that of his mother in regards the changing realities of this century, that the world has become a very small global village?
Well, indeed it has, and we see this through the Russia crisis is a very sad example of this. Russia invades Ukraine, and we're all facing the implications through increasing food prices, fuel and fertilizer, including here in Nigeria. So I think that is an important role for the king, particularly in his role as head of the Commonwealth. That's where he will connect the citizens of Britain, the ordinary citizens of Britain, with the citizens of Barbados, of Nigeria, all those 56 countries. It becomes a global family based on common values. And that's why the Commonwealth exists. To become a member of the club, you have to espouse the values of the Commonwealth. So I think what British people will want to see is him connecting them to the citizens of the Commonwealth in particular, and working through the leaders of the Commonwealth to help solve their problems. It is more of a soft power role rather than a role that the Prime Minister would have, but his convening power is phenomenal. That's what brings people together. So I believe that's what the citizens of the world will look to. We're very proud we were very proud of the Queen. We will want to continue to be very proud to be a country that has a sovereign who's so well respected around the world. Gives us a very satisfied feeling. I think as citizens of Britain, you see it in all the people queuing to pay their respects to, when her coffin was there for people to pay their respects. People were very sort of somber and humble, but also that deep sense of pride. And I think that's what they'll look to the king to do. Problems will change, issues will change, but he will remain that stability, that foundation, connecting them through the global theatre and helping to solve their problems through convening world leaders, particularly through the Commonwealth.
Well, we'll take a short break here, and I'll be back in a moment. Thanks for holding on, and if you are just joining, this is Global Update, the program that brings you up to speed with developments from around the globe. And on this edition is the British High Commissioner to Nigeria. Thank you for having us once again in your home.
Very pleased to have you here.
Your Excellency, I would like to begin by asking you, in your own perspective, what do we hope to see from the monarchy from now as we forge ahead?
Well, I think what we want to see, first of all, is King Charles III building on the wonderful legacy of Queen Elizabeth II, 70 years on the throne. People understand there will be change and continued turbulence in the world, but what we don't want to see is a radical departure from the role that Queen Elizabeth II played in providing support, solace, comfort to people in difficult times. So continuity in that sense, but a recognition that the world is changing in many aspects, including the role of the Commonwealth. The heads of Commonwealth countries agreed that King Charles would take over the role of head of the Commonwealth at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London in 2018. So he will continue to play that role. But he spoke at the the Rwanda meeting and Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, and he was asked about how do you feel about countries deciding who are currently realms, which means that the sovereign is their head of state, so countries like Canada, Australia and so on, who still have the sovereign as head of state. And he said there is absolutely no problem. Every country has the right to decide who their head of state is, and that should happen calmly without any concerns. Barbados, for example, did transition recently. We expect potentially Jamaica to do so. What he wants, though, is that the Commonwealth as a family of 56 countries remains close. So I think recognising that evolution, and we want him to lead that evolution in a positive way. I think the third thing will be to build on his 70 years of apprenticeship, all the knowledge he's accumulated, his passions and commitments on issues like climate change, but now using his convening power role rather than his more campaigning type role. He will, for example, Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in a meeting like the one happening in New York. If we put up the King Charles III, to convene a meeting, people will come, because they respect him, they understand him. So he will probably be a bit more active on that convening role than his mother was, but nevertheless within the boundaries of what's acceptable in his role as sovereign. But I think the most important role he plays is to provide people with that sense of continuity. You know, the whatever happens in the world, the one thing that stays constant for us is that we have a sovereign who's respected globally, and that helps all of us, I think, to deal with the turbulence in our lives.
Right. We'll take the last question with and talking about King Charles again. He was in Nigeria 2018, and back then I remember he came with his the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla. I personally was part of the selected diplomatic correspondence that covered the event. And I remember very well, he was so glad, when he came around, and he uttered this and said that he will be back, and as well make provisions for a robust working relations with Nigeria in the area of agricultural exchange. And do we see him coming over in the instance of this, or the High Commissioner would make it possible? We had him as a prince.
I'm very hopeful that he will return to Nigeria as King Charles III. He's already made 4 visits, actually, to Nigeria. His first visit was in 1990 with his then wife, Princess Diana. His second visit was in 1999 for the inauguration of President Obasanjo. His third visit was in 2006, where he did a 3-day state visit. And the most recent visit was 2018, just before I arrived, and so I sadly missed it. My predecessor hosted with his then wife, his current wife, who is now the Queen Consort, of course. He's also done a virtual visit when the COVID process was happening. One of his many charities is the International Rescue Committee, who are very active in Nigeria, particularly on the humanitarian front in northeast Nigeria. So he asked that charity to arrange a virtual visit, so him to go around the country virtually to see the really good work they do. And I mentioned the other 2 encounters with President Buhari, the one at Dumfries House in 2020 and at COP26. So these visits are, remember, also inward as well as outward. So, when the president is visiting, he will meet the king. The other interesting thing about the king is I got a call from Clarence House, his previous home, from his private secretary telling me the king, the prince, as he was then, has just read your telegram on the security situation in Nigeria, and he's noted with some concern, and he would like to, and he asked a series of questions as to what we were doing. And I went to tell the woman who wrote the telegram, who drafted it for me, do you realise that Prince Charles has read your telegram? She was absolutely thrilled. But the fact that he is actively reading the telegrams from his high commissioners around the world, because we're his high commissioners, we are there to represent him. And that shows you how much interest he has. But I know he's particularly interested in Nigeria because, as anybody who follows Africa closely knows, this is the giant of Africa. This will determine the future of Africa. So I have to say, takes particular interest in Nigeria. He wanted to take a call from President Buhari from condolence. I mean, many, many world leaders have offered to make calls of condolence. He can't take them all, but Nigeria is on that list. So that gives you just a flavour, I think. Now, obviously, as he only came in fairly recently in 2018, it may be a few years before he comes to Nigeria again. But I will be absolutely determined to bring him here, as you said, on a state visit. As king, with his wife, and indeed perhaps his son. It would also be nice to have Prince William, now the Prince of Wales, who has inherited that title. But what I am clear on is that though that connection between the UK and Nigeria, part of the strong bond, is that connection through that link between the previous queen and now the king. They care about Nigeria. She did. Her son does, and I'm sure William will as well. So that creates a particular strength for us in our relationship.
So can I comfortably say that I will hope to see my king very soon, someday?
I think you can comfortably say you will see your king. I can't say exactly how soon, but definitely he will be here during his reign as king. I'm absolutely confident of that.
Oh, yeah.
That concludes this week's edition of the program Global Update. Hope to come your way again in our next edition. So let's make it a date with a fresh package. I am Patricia A. Samiluba. Let's work towards what will keep us united for a positive purpose. Bye for now.